Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Iyad Najad, 21 years old, and Iyad Khudas, 27 years old, were martyred and 4 others were injured as a result of a raid launched by the Israeli Air Force on a group of citizens in Jabalia.
The latest Israeli raid left 2 martyred and many injured in Beit Lahia, north of Gaza. A group of young men were attacked when they were in a garden and were surprised by 2 missiles that were launched by Israeli warplanes that have been hovering over Gaza for the past several days. As a result, the body parts of the 2 martyrs were scattered throughout the area, mixed with their clothes and dirt.
The first missile was launched towards the group. The second missile hit 2 men who were martyred and transported to the hospitals.
I saw people carrying out the 2 martyrs who were covered with blankets, and the people were yelling, "God is the greatest," before they put the martyrs in the fridge.
All people in all political factions reject and condemn this action in all its forms.
9 were injured, all of whom were civilians, including a young girl. They were transported to the Martyr Kamal Adwan Hospital in Jabalia. Hundreds of people poured into the hospital to express their anger towards the escalation of the Israeli aggression and their rejection to the policy of assassination that have been a source of concern to the Palestinian citizens.
As a result of the shelling that the Jabalia refugee camp was subjected to today, we have 2 martyrs and 9 injuries, including 1 critical case, which was first received at the Martyr Kamal Adwan Hospital and then transported to the Shifa Hospital, so the victim could be treated by doctors specializing in operating on blood vessels and nerves. Also, a 5-year-old child suffered a head injury.
This assassination operation comes only a few hours after the failed Israeli assassination attempt in eastern Khan Yunis that almost killed a number of civilians, and only 1 day after the assassination of a Palestinian leader from the Popular Resistance Committee in Rafah. In response to this Israeli escalation, which coincides with threats to continue the war against the Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority warned against this and against possible repercussions on the situation in general, including efforts exerted to revive the peace process.
إن استمرار إسرائيل أو استئناف إسرائيل لعمليات الاغتيال اليومية.
The resumption of Israeli assassinations on a daily basis is a dangerous policy that will reflect negatively on the positive environment created by the cooling off period. We demand that the Israeli government stop this aggression and policy because it is useless and will only cause further deterioration. We reject the escalation of the Israeli government against the Palestinian people. We reject and condemn the daily crimes and assassinations.
The Islamic Jihad movement is renewing its commitment to the cooling off period that was signed in Cairo in March 2005, on the condition that this agreement is mutually respected by the resistance and the enemy.
Incursions and arrests in the West Bank have not stopped, as well as the Israeli shelling and assassinations in Gaza. It seems that Israel is going forward with its military escalation policy on the ground to serve election interests, ignoring all international pleas and the commitment of the Palestinian resistance to the cooling off period. From the Martyr Kamal Adwan Hospital in Jabalia, Adil Zanoun, Palestine Television.
IDF artillery today pounded terrorist positions in the northern Gaza Strip in response to the continued firing of Qassam rockets and mortars into Israel. There's been heavy cross-border firing since last night's IDF assassination of a leading terrorist. We get more on this report from Dennis Zinn.
The Popular Resistance Committee's group today declared that the temporary truce with Israel is over following yesterday's targeted killing of one of their senior commanders, Mahmoud Arkan. Last night, an IDF air-launched missile hit Arkan's car, killing him and wounding 6 others in the vehicle and 3 bystanders. According to military intelligence, Arkan was responsible for several terror attacks in the Gaza area, including the assault on the Girit outpost where an IDF soldier was killed shortly before the implementation of the disengagement. A Popular Resistance Committee's spokesman vowed to take harsh revenge for the death of their commander of the southern Gaza Strip. This morning, in a joint announcement, both the Islamic Jihad and the Popular Resistance groups in the Gaza Strip warned the Palestinian Authority against trying to arrest any of their members. Yesterday in the West Bank, Palestinian policemen arrested 33 members of the Islamic Jihad. The sweep was prompted by Monday's suicide bombing in Netanya. Some Palestinians slammed the PA for what they called collaborating with Israel. In the meantime, the government decided to postpone the opening of the bus and truck convoy operation between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. The plan was to link the West Bank and Gaza by way of public transport, which would enable Palestinians to travel and move cargo between the 2 Palestinian land blocks. Israeli security sources said that the postponement was due to the Palestinian refusal to allow Israel the proper monitoring of people at the Rafah international border crossing, as was agreed to in recent talks. Dennis Zin, IBA News.
Thousands of residents in Tehran mourned the heart-wrenching killing of over 100 victims of the C-130 plane crash and flooded to Tehran's Beheshtzara cemetery to lay them to rest. Present at the funeral procession, apart from ordinary people and country officials, were news and media crew who ironically enough reported the death of their colleagues who themselves used to cover numerous reports.
Final
Speaker Ahmadi Najad, speaking at the ceremony, called on the officials to launch a thorough investigation into the tragic incident. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says Iran's legitimate right to peaceful nuclear program is non-negotiable. President Ahmadinejad told reporters on Thursday that Iran was among the first countries to join the International Atomic Energy Agency and signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which thereby entitles the country to enjoy a peaceful nuclear program. Iran and Russia reached a final agreement over the timetable of Bushehr nuclear power plant becoming operational. The agreement was reached with head of the Russian Atomic Energy Agency, Sergei Kiryanko, and Iranian ambassador to Moscow, Ramazan Zareh, in presence. The pair also discussed peaceful nuclear energy cooperation. Indian Deputy Foreign Minister Shyam Saran refers to Iran as the strategic partner of his country in the Middle East. Saran, who was reacting to the recent comments made by the U.S. Undersecretary of State Nicholas Burns, who had said Iran and the energy gas pipeline project is hypothetical, expressed surprise over the remarks and added India has not provided any country with such assurances. Indian top official reiterated that Iran-India gas cooperation is surely going to materialize.
The Iranian President Mohammad Ahmadi Najad confirmed that Israel poses one of the biggest challenges that the Islamic world and the region face. In an interview with Al-Alam television, Ahmadi Najad criticized the European countries that defend the existence of the Israeli occupation, presenting 2 options to resolve the Palestinian plight.
يمكن للأوروبيين أن يهبوا أجزاء من أراضيهم لإسرائيل.
The Europeans can grant parts of their lands to Israel. We support this idea. They can also give Israel whatever they want, from material and weaponry support to establish their country. Specifically, Germany and Vienna can place a number of their regions under Israeli control as a way to solve the essence of their problem. Another recommendation is allowing for a Palestinian referendum in which all Jewish and Palestinian residents could participate, under the auspices of the United Nations, to elect a government so they can determine their future by themselves.
The Iranian president also accused Western countries of having double standards when dealing with massacres carried out by the Israeli occupation against the Palestinian people, pointing out that the Palestinian plight is not one that can be solved by a group or political party. Rather, it is the plight of a people and a nation.
We believe that the Zionist entity plays a policing role for the interests of the Western countries in the heart of the Islamic world. If this is not the case, how then can one explain the uproars and the issuance of hundreds of statements when a government arrests one person? However, in contrast, they turn a blind eye to massacres committed against an entire nation. Naturally, we distinguish between Judaism and Zionism, and luckily the Jewish religion is completely different from Zionism. As for the Palestinian plight, it is a plight of a people and a nation. Groups or political parties cannot make decisions affecting them to serve their security interests.
The Progressive Socialist Party MP Walid Jumblat met with Maronite Patriarch Cardinal Nasrallah Boutros-Fer this morning, accompanied by MP Wael Abu Faour. Following the meeting, Jumblat said the future was promising, but patience was needed. He added all of the Lebanese were united in awaiting independence, sovereignty, and the respect of human rights. Jumblat announced that the celebration scheduled to take place next Sunday in memory of late leader Kamal Jumblat was cancelled, calling on all the Lebanese to gather next year at the burial site of slain Premier Rafiq Hariri. He hoped by then the truth in the assassination would have been revealed. Prime Minister Fuad Sanyura said yesterday the United Nations was now actively seeking a successor to the German prosecutor heading the inquiry into slain Premier Rafiq Hariri's murder. Meanwhile, the UN hearing of 5 Syrian intelligence officials over Hariri's assassination, which began on Monday behind closed doors, ended yesterday in Vienna. Yumna Tayara has the story.
A Syrian diplomatic source in the Austrian capital said it's finished for the whole session. The top Syrian diplomat, who declined to be named, said he hoped there would be nothing more until December 15, when the UN Commission was expected to hand in its second report. He confirmed the 3 men heard by the Commission Wednesday included Abdelkarim Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Affairs Department, and Communication Chief Zahir al-Yusuf. The third witness was retired Colonel Samih al-Kashami, a deputy of Syria's foreign intelligence chief in Lebanon, Rustum Ghazali, despite reports Tuesday in the London-based Arabic daily Al Hayat that he would not be present at the hearings. Previous unconfirmed reports had named Hussam Tahir Hussam, a Syrian living in Lebanon, as the third man at the hearings. Seen as a key figure in the UN investigation, he retracted his deposition to the Melis Commission on Syrian television on November 28, saying he was forced to testify under threats. Monday, UN investigators questioned Ghazali and his deputy Jami' Jama. The 2 men returned to Damascus immediately after the hearings. According to a diplomatic source, the 3 remaining witnesses were due to return to the Syrian capital late Wednesday. The conclusion of the hearings, which were held in the utmost secrecy, came shortly after Melis told Lebanese Prime Minister Fuad Sanyura he would step down as the Commission's chief investigation after December 31. Sanyura reiterated that from the start, Melis said that he would only stay 6 months in charge of the Commission of Inquiry. He added that Melis informed him that he would not stay beyond that date. Sanyura told reporters negotiations were now underway at the UN Security Council with the Secretary General Kofi Annan to appoint a successor. According to an Arab diplomat in Vienna, Melis was exasperated by interventions in his investigation, including a Saudi move for the hearings to be held in Vienna rather than at the Commission's headquarters on the outskirts of Beirut.
Syria's UN envoy Faisal Magdad said in New York yesterday that his country wanted Lebanon to bring justice to those who sought to mislead and misinform the UN team probing Hariri's murder. Magdad assured that Damascus's main concern was that there be a credible investigation to find the truth. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, Amir Aramout announced that he filed a lawsuit against the alleged Syrian witness Hussam Tahir Hussam, Lieutenant Samir Shehadeh, and journalist Faris Khashan, following claims made by Hussam on television 10 days ago that Khashan and Shehadeh ordered him to say that Araoun was on the scene of the February 14th explosion as it took place. In Turkey, the lawyer of Syrian Lu'ail Shakka, who was convicted of belonging to Al-Qaeda and of planning explosion of an Israeli ship in Antalya 4 months ago, claimed that CIA officers went into Sakka's prison cell and under threat obliged him to submit a testimony that would implement Syria in the February Beirut bombing. The Turkish Foreign Ministry slammed these claims as irresponsible and devaluating Turkey's stature in the world.
بعد تطويق المجموعة الإرهابية التكفيرية صباح يوم الأحد الماضي وإصابة 2 من الإرهابيين.
After surrounding the Takfiri terrorist cell last Sunday morning, 2 of the terrorists were critically injured during armed clashes. Investigations led to the finding of 2 storehouses filled with explosives and other equipment and materials. There were also training manuals on terrorist operations and on carrying out bombing operations in public buildings, government administrations, and in security headquarters. Documents that were found in the possession of the terrorist cell revealed plans for operations on monitoring and following up on government officials, government headquarters, and public institutions. Before the 2 terrorists were killed by injuries sustained during armed clashes, they confessed to the intention of holding communications with similar groups that are active in countries neighboring Syria. They also confessed to plans on raiding banks, commercial stores, and economic institutions in order to finance their terrorist operations. In their latest operations, anti-terrorist forces have discovered many weapon storehouses for the Takfiri terrorists. They have also found explosives and items in different areas in the city of Aleppo and the suburbs of Damascus, including war machine guns and light weaponry, RPG missiles, guns, explosive substances, explosive builds, different communication equipment, in addition to forged and stolen personal documents from Arab and Syrian nationals, as well as Takfiri literature and brochures.
في أثناء محاولة إعادة نقله إلى لبنان إثر الملاحقة الأمنية.
The incidents of September 11, 2001 had burdened the world with the definition of the word terrorism. The West confuses the meaning of the word by not distinguishing between acts of violence and the legitimate right of resistance against foreign occupation, whereas many other nations, especially Arab and Muslim, do see the difference between terrorism and the right of resistance guaranteed by international laws.
ما إن وقعت هجمات 11 من سبتمبر عام 2001 في مدينتي نيويورك وواشنطن.
The word terrorism has become a rather familiar vocabulary word in the aftermath of September 11th attacks on New York and Washington. Since then, the definition of terrorism has been gaining wide-scale legal, ideological, and political momentum. The United States of America has declared many wars in a campaign that was later called the War on Terrorism. At the end of 2001, the U.S. launched its first war in Afghanistan, toppling the Taliban regime and crushing the Al-Qaeda organization, which was responsible for the September 11th attacks. In 2003, the U.S. declared its second war on Iraq and overthrew the regime of Saddam Hussein for reasons that he was seeking to build weapons of mass destruction, which according to U.S. officials poses a threat to the world. This war was preemptive.
وكانت تلك الحرب في سياق ما أطلقت عليه الولايات المتحدة الحرب الاستباقية.
Many observers believe that the world went through 3 stages of international terrorism during the present era. The first stage, which was mainly motivated by extreme nationalism, took place in Europe between the late 1800s and the 1930s. The assassination of Austria's Crown Prince and the declaration of World War I were among the main events in this stage. The second stage, which was ideologically motivated within the framework of the Cold War, took place in the 20th century, namely the 1960s and 1970s. Most of the main players in this stage were leftist organizations such as the German Baader-Meinhof, the Italian Red Brigades, and the Japanese Red Army. The third stage, which is still going on today, is played out by people of different nationalities, but of the same religious or political viewpoint. They share information via databases, which some experts refer to as the database of terrorism. The international community has held many conferences to combat terrorism. The latest was the convention that took place in Saudi Arabia in February 2005. The world agreed that the word terrorism fits the definition of a criminal, bloody, and violent act, and must be combated. However, the West and the Arab world have different positions regarding the legitimate right of resistance against occupation. The West considers all violent acts to be terrorism, whereas Arabs believe that the right of resistance, which is guaranteed by international law, is not terrorism. However, Arabs do believe that the right of resistance does not include the terrorist acts and operations that struck many Arab and Muslim cities, such as Bali, Riyadh, Istanbul, Amman, and others.
التي عانتها دول عربية وإسلامية أيضا كما حدث في بالي والرياض واسطنبول وعمان وغيرها من المدن العربية والإسلامية.
Nicholas Smith, journalist for the Sunday Times, is speaking to us now from the Belgian capital, Brussels. Nicholas Smith, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. On November the 9th, the first female European suicide bomber, Muriel de Gog, attacked an American convoy to the north of Baghdad. Are we seeing the start of a female bombing trend?
I think it's certainly too early to say that a trend is beginning, although experts in Belgium are certainly worried that it could be. The case of Muriel de Gog took Belgium by surprise because she was the first European woman to go on a suicide mission, and now experts are saying that she could serve as a model to other young women who might want to carry out similar deadly missions.
Why do you think females are following their male counterparts to be suicide bombers?
It's difficult to give a general answer to that. I think there are specific cases where, certainly in Belgium, there are reports of women whose husbands are in prison. They've been imprisoned for suspected terrorist charges, and these women want to make the point. They want to basically fight the cause of their husbands. In the case of Muriel de Gog, what experts are saying is that she followed the classic profile of a convert to radical Islam. She had a drugs problem when she was younger. She had no real job. She wasn't very close to her family, and then she married a man who was very extreme in his Muslim faith, and she apparently was very easily influenced.
Nicola, do you think that we're seeing a cause and effect kind of scenario then, that perhaps people who were ill-fitted into society when they were younger or have had traumatic emotional experiences are more likely to become suicide bombers?
It certainly seems to be a factor that has played in a number of cases. In the case of Muriel de Gog, it certainly was a factor. There is also another case of a Belgian man who has been arrested on suspicion of recruiting suicide bombers, and he also had a difficult childhood, and he was very much on the margins of society, and he seems to have come under the influence of some radical Islamic group.
So just to end on the subject of female bombers, do you think the war on terror is actually creating them? You mentioned earlier that perhaps female bombers have had relatives who've been arrested, accused of terror offences. So in some way, are they casualties of the war on terror?
There may be a feeling among some communities that they have been victimized. This may play a factor in the reasons for why they would want to take such extreme measures.
Okay, Nicola Smith joining us there from Brussels. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
The Palestinian National Folkloric Musical Group presents a message of peace with the theme that the Palestinian people love life and reject killing and violence. The 50 Palestinian youth that make up this group delivered this message in the United States in an artistic format. The group gave a song and dance performance at the Lincoln Theater in the American capital and will hold more performances in New York City and Detroit, and will later tour in various cities around the world in an attempt to change the distorted image the world has of the Palestinian people.
Palestinian folkloric tunes and songs were heard throughout the United States, where the dancers gave a magnificent performance. In their special way, they tried to wipe out the distorted image in which Israel succeeded to depict the Palestinians as terrorists.
We want to send our message to the world that there is another side to the Palestinian people. Western and Arab media have emphasized the political aspects when covering Palestinian issues, such as the bombings, rock throwing, tanks, and destruction of homes. We also have the Palestinian Artists Guild, which has been developing the talents of Palestinian artists to a level that is comparable to Arab and European worlds.
The Palestinian National Folkloric Musical Group was established in 1979 and now has 50 dancers, both young men and women, who work on a volunteer basis. The group gets its funding from the Swedish government, the United Nations Treasury for Development, and some local Palestinian companies, in addition to the ticket sales for the performances.
Generally, in America, the media gives a shallow and a negative image about the Palestinian people. This is why arts and performances are important, because they can show the Palestinian people have art, culture, and dancing and other things that are really nice.
The group has traveled throughout the Arab world, Europe, and America, and entertained crowds with its presence. There is only one place left that members of the group dream of going to, and this is Gaza. The conditions imposed by occupation prevent them from materializing this dream, and because the group cannot be split from the Palestinian people, they too have suffered from the Israeli occupation.
We were exposed to many difficulties. One of the costume designers had his house destroyed, and another one was arrested. One of the dancer's sons was about to die because the Israelis prevented him from reaching the hospital.
The program for the group this year includes performances from some of its most famous and recent dances, such as the Haifa and Beirut dances and Baalbek. They are about love, exile, and resistance, inspired from a beautiful poem by the famous Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. The group tries to present these folkloric songs in a modern way to show the world that Palestinians are a people that reject violence and killing and look for a secure life in their homeland.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.